I wanted to share my feelings with you about these protests and the unnecessary police brutality and the horror that we've been watching over the last few weeks. It's really hard to watch two sides of this necessary expression of this country. We have to be able to protest, and we have to be able to keep this place safe in some capacity. And it's misfiring, okay? And why is it misfiring? And I think that if we look at spirituality, if you're doing spirituality, you know that, or you are told at least, that it all rises out of God, right? Like all the trees rise out of the earth, all the grass and the plants are rise out of earth. We all rise out of this God. We're kind of made from God, so to speak. We're made of this divine energy. And even if you're just a scientist, you know that we are made up of protons, neutrons, electrons, and those are made up of the subatomic particles, and those are made up of the subatomic. And back it goes. And that we're all made of the same stuff. And whatever powers those things powers us, and it's all really just one big beautiful thing. And when we lose sight of that, we start seeing an us and a them. And then there's conflict, just like my wife and I have conflict when I think that we shouldn't homeschool the kids and she thinks we should, and so we conflict and we become opponents, and we're of the same family and we love each other, and we still can become opponents because we see this thing playing out in different ways. So just imagine if you don't see yourself as a wonderful, beautiful family, how quickly your opposition to each other can turn sour and violent. So as a practice, let's start seeing each other as part of our family. I think COVID-19 should have taught us that we share this earth. And there aren't walls between countries, really. They might be trying to change that, but there's not walls between countries. We share this space. We need each other. And not to sound like a hippie, but mechanically, we need each other. We need people to make our food for us. We need farmers and we need cops. We need cops. We need protesters. Because when in the history of history has there ever been a government that should have been trusted? Should the Romans have been trusted? Should the queens and kings been trusted? Why should we ever trust a government? It's one of those necessary evils. So let's keep in mind that the same God made us all. The same planet, even if you don't believe in all that stuff, the same planet made us all, and we can go different directions and still be peaceful. You can still do it. There's ugly divorces and there's good divorces, right? You can choose which way you want to go. But let's begin with looking at protests and cops and try to understand what each side is going through instead of just force-feeding our opinions down someone else's throat, writing it on a rock and throwing it through someone's windshield. Let's just try to understand what it is that they're feeling. And my word for the day is going to be conditioning. And conditioning would look something like this. If I and all my hippie friends got together in a field of flowers and flowing gowns and looks very hippie and natural and wonderful. We're holding hands and strumming acoustic guitars and we're singing Kumbaya. And at the end of this gathering, we hug and two of us go and rob a bank. After about a month of us meeting, we are going to condition our environment, our society, into thinking that we're a violent group. We have done nothing violent. It's the two on the outside who don't get it, who go and rob the bank. Cops do not expect this to be peaceful because it hasn't been peaceful. And I think that's why Martin Luther King was so adamant about being peaceful, because you lose the respect. You know, if you're protesting, who is it that you want to hear you protesting? It's people who make laws. And they're not going to come out on the streets so you can throw a rock at their face. That's why they send police officers and task forces and whatever else that they send out there, because they don't feel safe. They have been conditioned to think that these things will turn violent, and for good reason. And cops go out there and they don't expect it to be peaceful. So they bring their guns and their batons and tear gas and they bring all this stuff. And one side is bringing gasoline and then the other side is bringing the match, and they wonder why they can't make it work. You cannot bring your drama to this meeting. You've got to check yourself, and if you're too angry, you've got to stay at home. If you're a cop and you're clocking in for the day angry, you need to go home. And if you're a protester and you know that you can't control it, just leave the rock at the house or stay at home, because you're just making it worse. No one's listening to you while you're being violent. Both sides. No one's going to listen to you and no one's going to respect you because you're being violent. I think it was Ram Dass who said, don't expect your anger to bring about peace. Don't expect your hatred to bring about peace. If someone barged into your house and started setting things on fire, you wouldn't say, you know what, I've never considered your perspective before. I think I'll consider it now. You're going to say, get the, and you're going to try to shoot them or whatever. So, if you are a law enforcement officer, I would hope that your commitment is to law and in defense of rights, not defense of your clique. I think that the videos have said so much when he's kneeling on the man's neck, George's neck, right? He's kneeling on his neck, and the other officer is behind him checking left and right, and he allowed it to happen. You see violence. Your commitment was to your organization and not to upholding the law. And when the old man was pushed down, all of the other police officers, now that those two men have been arrested for felony assault charges, and all of the other officers there didn't do anything. It's enough to have them arrested, but none of the officers did anything. And not only did they not do anything, but when those two officers were initially suspended, 50-something or 40-something, I don't remember the number, but all of these other officers put in their resignation in solidarity for the men who broke the law. Their commitment is to themselves, their organization. No one stopped them at the time. No one knelt down to see if the man was okay. What I saw was the person holding the video, instead of running to the man's aid or putting handcuffs on the officer who did that, they ran to the press and said, get out of here, put your camera down and get out of here. How do you expect people to respect you? You want people to respect your agency? When you behave this way, it's not going to happen. So if there's any message that I have about this, one is that I am so horrified by all the stuff that I've seen, the opposition to the Black Lives Matter. And there was a beautiful thing that someone said recently. They mentioned in the Bible that the story from the Bible that there's the man and the 100 sheep, and the one sheep goes off, and so he leaves the 99 other sheep. And I say, hey, wait, why did you leave the 99 sheep to go save the one? And he says, well, the one was in trouble. The other 99 weren't in trouble. And that is so beautiful. And it's easy for us to get defensive. And when people say Black Lives Matter, you say, well, all lives matter. And that's true. And the old man who was pushed down he had appeared to be white. I don't know. Everyone's in trouble, but it does seem like specifically at this time, Black people are having the most trouble. And so we don't give everybody Band-Aids at the same time. We only give Band-Aids to the people who need it most. But let's please try to have a loving understanding of who it is that we're working with. And if you think that your protest is going to turn violent, maybe it's just not the way you need to express your protest. And maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a social media thing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we set up tents and do stuff that's not threatening. We express it in a new way, because this way just isn't working. Protests started because officers were behaving badly, and now all they're doing is misbehaving even more badly. I think that it's gonna be okay, and I think that it's ugly right now, but don't panic, and don't think that you have to win this war against cops, and cops don't think that you have to win this war against civilians, because it's not a war. It doesn't have to be a war. We really are heading in the same place, and we really all want the same stuff. Let's not feel like we have to win this thing, because that's where panic and desperation comes in. Okay, and then that's when we make bad decisions. So from a spiritual perspective, it's not our role to win. And outcome, let's let outcome be in the realm of God. Let's let God take care of outcomes. You show up and you do your part, right? Like a surgeon. You show up, you do the surgery the best of your ability, and if he dies, then you let it go. And you try again on the next one. It was a hard lesson to realize that we don't control outcome. We do our part. We do our part and we leave outcomes to God. I had a friend of mine, a coworker. He was our lead man, and he went fighting every day with human resources to get the other coworker the money that he was told he was going to get, and he was getting combative, and he was starting to jeopardize himself. And I said, you got to stop before they fire you, because we need you, right? We need you in this. So you put in your fight, you do your fight, and you let God determine whether or not this man gets his money. And it was a good feeling, and I never considered it until it just poured out of my mouth. But I think that the same would apply here. It's not the protester's job to win. How do you win in a protest anyway? It's your job to be heard. And if they're not going to hear you when you're violent, then you need to do it in a peaceful way. And cops, if you go and you hit them every time, they're not going to be peaceful anymore. You can't make them be peaceful. You can't expect hitting them with batons to make them peaceful. So let's do our part, contribute in a way that you feel is right for you. check yourself. And don't demand an outcome. You can't demand an outcome. Outcomes are bigger pictures than all of us, and anything that we are individually capable of. Whew. All right. Good luck out there. I love you. Let's try to reel this thing back in so we can be heard and so that the right steps are going to be taken. Okay, it may be it may seem slower, but these protests turning violent isn't a fast way to victory. That's just not how it is. All right, that's it.